Chapter 12. The burden of the word of the Lord concerning Israel, the saying of the Lord, who stretched forth the heavens, and laid the foundation of the earth, and formed the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of staggering unto all the peoples round about, and upon Judah also shall it fall, to be in the siege against Jerusalem. And it shall come to pass in that day, that I will make Jerusalem a stone of burden for all the peoples. All that burden themselves with it shall be sore wounded, and all the nations of the earth shall be gathered together against it. In that day, saith the Lord, I will smite every horse with bewilderment, and his rider with madness, and I will open mine eyes upon the house of Judah, and will smite every horse of the peoples with blindness. And the chiefs of Judah shall say in their heart, The inhabitants of Jerusalem are my strength through the Lord of hosts their God. In that day will I make the chiefs of Judah like a pan of fire among the wood, and like a torch of fire among sheaves. And they shall devour all the peoples round about, on the right hand and on the left. And Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place, even in Jerusalem. The Lord also shall save the tents of Judah first, that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem be not magnified above Judah. In that day shall the Lord defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and he that stumbleth among them at that day shall be as David, and the house of David shall be as a godlike being, as the angel of the Lord before them. And it shall come to pass in that day, that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplication, and they shall look unto me, because they have thrust him through. And they shall mourn for him, as one mourneth for his only son, and it shall be in bitterness for him, as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. In that day shall there be a great mourning in Jerusalem, as the mourning of Hadad Ramon in the valley of Megiddon. And the land shall mourn, every family apart, the family of the house of David apart, and their wives apart, the family of the house of Nathan apart, and their wives apart, the family of the house of Levi apart, and their wives apart, the family of the Shimeites apart, and their wives apart, all the families that remain, every family apart, and their wives apart. Let's go back up, verse 1. Now yesterday, in chapter 11, we began with these doors. Open these doors of Lebanon, this place that was made white, this place of purity. When we'll find out it's a similitude. It's something we can look at to see this great. It represents a great palace, a place that God prepared, and it's for a purpose. And we have found out it's for a dedicated thing. It was a dedicated thing. And the price of it, we'll find out, was this 30 pieces of silver. These 30 pieces of silver, because it was a dedicated thing, and it's another generation that's going to pass through the fire, this judgment of God, even in, that which is going to make atonement. These things that are purified, these things that God shall, we find, add to his flock. God will add to his flock again. These flock of slaughter even that was prepared, that was set aside for this. And we had the similitude of the two staffs, even these two, a staff, or these two staves it was called, my staff graciousness and my staff binders, these two that represented the favor and that which binds up, because see, God's been doing a great work for many years. God does these great works in the earth so that we can witness these things. And then we find out, he says, I will raise up this foolish shepherd. And this foolish shepherd is one that's not going to tend the flock. He doesn't care about the flock. What he's going to do is he's going to abuse his power, abuse his authority. And it's all done in gain, to gain wealth. And that's what it's always about, these great treasures they think they're getting. And we'll find out these treasures are of a fleshful understanding. They are not a treasure that does one really any good. The wealth of life comes in the understanding and the joy of life that comes from the observance or the understanding of God's law, which He gave you in the beginning for your own good. But we're going to pick it up here in verse 1. The burden of the word of the Lord concerning Israel, the saying of the Lord, who stretched forth the heavens and laid the foundation of the earth, and formed the spirit of man within him. And the burden of the word, this burden, word that we're not crazy about, but you know, the burden is a load. It's something that's going to have to be taken with you, because we'll find out this is like, well, you're going to carry it on a trip, and the burden, a load, something has to be picked up of the word. And this is like a prophecy. This is something that's going to be taken with you when you leave, and it's concerning Israel. Israel are those that contend with the mighty one, though. This would be the saying of the Lord, or thus saith the Lord, who stretched forth the heavens and laid the foundation of the earth, and formed the spirit of man within him, that stretched forth the heavens, that stretcheth forth the heavens, these understandings even, and laid the foundation of the earth, and established those things even of the earth. This earth is the ground, and all things from it. It's flesh, it's all things we see. And they formed the spirit of man. Spirit of man is something within. It's within you, and it's kind of like your understanding. It's always changing, always becoming. See, it's always becoming something, and this is what God created that's within you, and we're trying to cause that to become just like God, our Father, see, and just like a child coming forth, we try to bring the child forth in a way that it can do well. And this is what the purpose of the law was in the beginning. 2. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of staggering unto all the peoples round about. And upon Judah also shall it fall to be in the siege against Jerusalem. Behold, look and see, I will make Jerusalem a cup of staggering. This cup of staggering, it's a cup of drunkenness, that which makes drunkenness. This city of the peaceful teachings, these teachings of peace, that's what Jerusalem means, and Jerusalem is the place of teachings of peace. And this shall become a cup of staggering, a cup of drunkenness unto all the people round about. And upon Judah also shall it fall to be in the siege against Jerusalem. And upon Judah, those are praisings, shall it fall as well to be in this siege. And that's to be against Jerusalem, those teachings of peace. 3. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will make Jerusalem a stone of burden for all the peoples. All that burden themselves with it shall be sore wounded, and all the nations of the earth shall be gathered together against it. And it shall come to pass in that day, and this understanding, this is what's going to come to pass, and we going to capture this understanding. I will make Jerusalem a stone of burden. A stone of burden, something that has to be carried, something that, that's that teachings of peace. Though God made it where it would be a burden. See, something has to be carried to all the people, and all that burden themselves with it shall be sore wounded. And this was a period of time where that is what it was made, something that would be a wound. This law, even to God, would be called a burden. It's a burden, something we wouldn't have to do. And all the nations of the earth should be gathered together against it. And we find out that's exactly what happened in the day. And in that understanding, saith the Lord, I will smite every horse with bewilderment, and her rider with madness. And I will open mine eyes upon the house of Judah, and I will smite every horse of the peoples with blindness. And in that day, even in that understanding, that little period right there of light and darkness, and that gives us a small amount of understanding, a little glimpse even, saith the Lord, I will smite every horse, and these are the things with strength, with bewilderment, but with wonder. With wonder, see, it's an amazement and a lack of understanding. All understanding is left, and his rider with madness, and that's that one that's set upon that great strength. See, that horse, and that what God created, his rider with madness, because why? All his understanding has been taken away. And I will open mine eyes upon the house of Judah. And my perceptions, these things which I perceive, or these things which I purpose to do upon the house of Judah. And that's that abode of those appraisings. And I will smite every horse of the peoples with blindness. And all these great strengths that they sit upon, I will smite with blindness. And that is to have no understanding, to not be able to see. See, to not be able to see is to have to gather understanding without the ability of vision, or to have to listen. You'll have to navigate by listening. 5. And the chiefs of the Judah shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are my strength through the Lord of hosts their God. And those that are chief of Judah, the chiefs are like the rulers, these ones that are over Judah, those are praisings. And Judah that's the Jews, that those from Judah shall say in their heart, even in their understandings, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are my strength through the Lord of hosts their God. And these inhabitants of Jerusalem, those that inhabit, will find out the teachings of peace, that place of the peaceful teachings, are my strength through the Lord of hosts their God, because we'll find out God strengthens them. God did that. That's the work of God. That's how God works. And 6, in that day will I make the chiefs of Judah like a pan of fire among the wood. And this, in that day, even in that understanding, will I make these chiefs of Judah, and these ones that are the rulers, these are like the heads of those appraising. They will become like a pan of fire among the wood, or even in this like a skillet, we would say today, something we cook in, a frying pan that's in the judgment. See, and this wood is always, when we get our wood, we go to the forest and we either hew a tree down or we gather the dead limbs from it. And like a torch of fire among sheaves, this torch, a torch is like a torch is a light, something we can see. But this one is like a fire among the sheaves. It's come to set fire to the sheaves, and that's what was gathered together. These were what was bound up. See, this is a judgment now, and it's come, and they shall devour all the peoples round about, and they shall devour or destroy all the peoples round about, because that's what was gathered together. That was in the gathering place too. We're going to find out where it's at. See, because this is all a similitude and an understanding. We have to hear and perceive what is going on the right hand and on the left. See, and that's in the strength of their works and in the witness of their works. And Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place, even in Jerusalem. And those teachings of peace shall be inhabited again in her own place, even in Jerusalem. And that's where God established it. We're going to find out. He even said his name there, because that's where from the beginning he set the law, and that's what it all represents. See, from the beginning. 7. The Lord also shall save the tents of Judah. First, that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem be not magnified above Judah. And the Lord also shall save the tents of Judah first. And we'll find out that Judah is going to be the one who is first, because he got the birthright and it would belong to him, even in the beginning. that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem be not magnified above Judah. And this would be for that reason that he saves these tents. And these tents are the dwelling places. These are the abodes, that place where they stay in their tabernacle of Judah. And we'll find out that little tabernacle we can see there even in the law, that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem be not magnified above Judah. And that's why it's there. See, so this house of David, and David was the beloved, that chosen one of God. From the beginning, this was the purpose, and the glory, his glory, and the glory of Jerusalem shouldn't be magnified above Judah, because we'll find out God made a great example, and God does the work, and this house of David, that's God's beloved, shouldn't be magnified above Judah, not even the teachings of peace, and that's those of praise. Because see, it was a work from the beginning. 8, in that day shall the Lord defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and he that stumbleth among them at that day shall be as David, and the house of David shall be as a godlike being, as the angel of the Lord before them. And in that day, and in that understanding, see, in that understanding, that small little glimpse, shall the Lord defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And in that way, we could say, this is how God's going to do it. He's going to save the tents of Judah first. He will defend Jerusalem. And he that stumbles among them at that day shall be as David. And David was once again that beloved, that mighty one. David was the one who had the two kingdoms in his hand. And the house of David shall be as a godlike being, as the angel of the Lord before them. And this godlike being, this house of David is the abode. And what that means is all the seed of David, this house, this what it represents shall be like a godlike being, and this godlike being is Elohim, and that is one of the strong ones of the mighty one, and it's like an angel of the Lord before them, and that's what one of the strong ones of the mighty one are. God's the mighty one. He always has been. Those that are with him, or because it's a plural, these are the representatives of God. That's what an angel is. See, an angel is one who represents God. He's a 9. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. And it's going to come to pass. See, these things in this understanding is how it's going to come to pass. And I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. And all these nations, that's all the peoples, all these, we'll find out the gatherings of all these other understandings that come against these teachings of peace in that place of the peaceful teachings. 10, and I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplication, and they shall look unto me, because they have thrust him through, and they shall mourn for him, as one mourneth for his only son, and it shall be in bitterness for him, as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Pour upon them is to dump, or to pour is to make this to come upon, make it come upon this house of David. And we'll find out, and as well, these inhabitants of Jerusalem, those of peaceful teachings, this spirit of grace, because we'll find out God is graceful. God does show favor, and he always has. This is how, and this favor that God has shown, and of supplications. These supplications is the askings for favor, the asking of favor, the asking of mercy, the asking of pity. We'll find out, because God's done a great work. And they shall look unto me, and they shall look unto me, because they have thrust him through. And that is that place, the one that he thrust through, that is that house of David. And they shall mourn for him, and that's who they're mourning for, and as one mourneth for his only son. This, and because, the nearest I can relate this, and to make it clear, was the rebuilding of Jericho, and the understanding that would come from that. God said you can't do that, and he said the price then of what it would cost. And it shall be in bitterness for him, because the bitterness is the great sorrow, and as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn, as one that is in bitterness or is in great sorrow for his firstborn. We'll find out. See, because God, this was the it's like the bitterness that comes from the loss of your firstborn child or his firstborn son. Great bitterness. And we can also relate this to the understanding would come from the story of Absalom. See, when David lost Absalom, there was a great mourning then, 11. Or a great mourning then, and 11. In that day shall there be a great mourning in Jerusalem, as the mourning of Harad Ramon in the valley of Megiddo. And this great mourning now in Jerusalem, and this great mourning that's going on in Jerusalem, that city of peaceful teachings, because it's a crying, this wailing, that it's God's. This is a work of God, and it's the mourning of Harad Ramon, and this Harad Ramon is it's a strength that moves softly, and that's what Hadad means, or this strength of something that's not doing anything. We can look at it like that, and what we're talking about is Ramon is a pomegranate, but Ramon is not an acceptable fruit. And why it's not acceptable is because it's unreachable. See, it's a fruit that's unreachable, and the strength of that fruit is because of our inability to grab that fruit, and to reach up and be able to lay our hand upon it, and that's the strength of that fruit. See, in the valley of Megiddo, and that valley of Megiddo, that's where they're all gathering. 12. And the land shall mourn, every family apart, the family of the house of David apart, and their wives apart, and the family of the house of Nathan apart, and their wives apart. And the land shall mourn, and that's all those that dwell in it. The land in here is referring to that, all those that dwell in it, every family, every clan, and this is all those, every family, all the people, the family of David, or the family of the house of David apart, and that's the family of the clan of the house of David, and that's all those that would represent the beloved, the chosen one of God, apart, and their wives apart. This word wives is woman, Isha, and that is a woman, and these are those things from men, and that's all their understandings they've taken to themselves, these wives, and the family of the house of Nathan apart, and the house, that abode of that which was the giver, that's the giver apart. They're going to be separated from their wives as well, and their wives separated from them. And these wives, once again, this is a woman. That means from man, and these things from man shall be separated. And these are those understandings that come from man. 13, the family of the house of Levi apart. Levi's the joiner, this one who joined, apart, and their wives apart. And this is a separation as well. These understandings away from those that have joined. And the family that clan of the Shimeites apart, and their wives apart, and this clan of the Shimeites, or that famous report, that great famous thing that's been heard, and their understandings as well, separated all the families that remain, every clan separated, and their understandings separated. See, that's the great work that God does in the end, because it's how God works. God has the ability to do these things. God is separating the understandings. We're going to move forward. Chapter 13. Turn and return.